Recording is stopped. All right, thank you. Good evening, and welcome to the council meeting of May 30th, 2022. The meeting is being live streamed on Facebook Live, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. We will be voting by electronic means for all votes except administrative. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences? I note that all members of council are present and we have quorum. We have been provided with a proposed agenda. And I do have a couple of additions. The first one is item C, 3C, the public hearing minutes. Item 9B, in camera, legal matter, former Robinson property. Are there any other proposed agenda items, additions to the agenda? Councilor Zabian?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I'd like to see if council would engage in a conversation on hosting a event for the business community to discuss the I can't get my words out either, to discuss the active transportation route. I think that I've spoken to many of them and they'd like to have some kind of formal presentation.
So could that be included under the update on the active transportation, under business arising from the minutes,
Yes,
since we already
there.
have active
If we
transportation
can
on the
have a
menu?
discussion, yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anything further? Nothing? Deputy Mayor, can I still hold you for the motion?
Yes, thank you.
And a second? Second. Councilor York, thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. So our next item is approval of our minutes. The minutes of the April 25th, 2022 council meeting have been distributed for your review. If there are no changes to the minutes, they are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate. All good? All right. You also have the minutes of the April 25th, 2022 special council meeting detailing our capital plan. And they were distributed for your review. If there are no changes, they are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate. No changes, all right. And the new item to our agenda, you have the public hearing minutes of May 30th, 2022. If there are no changes to the minutes, they are approved as distributed. And if there are, the recording secretary will annotate. None? All right, moving on. Perfect. Okay, our first item of business under business arising from the minutes is a second reading of for the rezoning in a C1 zone. And the application to rezone has been reviewed for compliance with the MPS and LUB. A public hearing was held this evening with no input from the public. It is recommended that council give second reading on the request to rezone PIDs 552-60400 and 552-46813 from general commercial C1 to 1 and 2 unit dwellings R2. So the motion would be that council give second reading to amend Appendix A of the zoning map of the land use bylaw of the town of Kentville to rezone PIDs 552-60400 and 552-46813 from general commercial C1 to 1 and 2 unit dwellings.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. And a second. Councilor Gerard, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council give second reading to amend Appendix A zoning map of the land use bylaw of the town of Kentville to rezone PIDs 552-60400 and 552-46813 from general commercial C1 to 1 and 2 unit dwellings R2. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to give second reading to amend Appendix A zoning map of the land use bylaw of the town of Kentville to rezone PIDs 552-60400 and 552-46813 from general commercial C1 to 1 and 2 unit dwellings R2. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, our next business arising is with regards to the active transportation update. And CAO, I understand that we have a video prepared by staff of the planned AT work for this fiscal, and subsequent to which you will provide us with an update on the question that have been sent to staff since our last meeting. And I want to thank Director Bedingfield and Bell for being here this evening in support of this plan. And following this, we have a request from Councilor Zabian. The floor is yours.
Excellent. I'll start, and then I'm going to throw it over to CIO Troke. Council, I believe that you were sent the following video that I'm going to show you today. I did want to give a massive shout out to Kirsten Duncan. I have no appreciation for how much work that took, other than I saw her sweating in her office for 3 days straight, so I just want to pass that on, and again, word of thanks. But for the general public, we do have this Active Transportation Network site now live that you can find on our website, and it has a lot of information. If I knew how to work this mouse, I'll just do this. Oh. Anyway, if you scroll down, then it's really lovely. I just can't do that here. I am. I know. I'm using 3 fingers, 4 fingers, 2 fingers. This is why there's 2 of us.
So right here.
You're going to be the scroller?
Oh, you can scroll.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Anyway, so you can see the videos that we're going to look at in a second here, but it also talks about, oh, look, it's flipping around. On your right-hand side there's the actual active transportation plan, so you can see the plan in its entirety. The KCA Walk Partway map, which is has been on there for quite a while, and this is, you can see those signs that where we get parents to drop their kids off and tell them how long it will take to walk to school, and then that's the active and safe routes to school. So we've got a lot of different things that have been going on over the years, and all the information on the side. The other thing to note here is there's some frequently asked questions around definitions. What are the construction map projects? That links to the capital projects map that Kirsten has began last year. She hasn't obviously filled it in this year because she's been working on this video. An example of active transportation route types, all these different pieces. So it's a really good opportunity to get updated on what's happening in the plan. So I'm going to start this and we'll walk through it. Again, Ahmad was in here the last meeting, 2 meetings ago. I'm not even sure. It was a while ago. And so Kirsten essentially took that and put it into a conceptual design and a video that we're gonna fly through here. So there's a number of projects happening this year under the AT schedule. This is the one that we wanted to make sure that you had the appropriate.
Screen too. How do you do it?
Thanks. Amount of detail on. Thank you, Dave. Again, why there needs to be 2 of us. So when we talk about a multi-use pathway, we're talking about a pathway that is 1.5 meters wide on each side. And a multi-use pathway means it's not just for bikes, it's not just for pedestrians, it's for every non-motorized vehicle, or excluding motorized mobility devices like motorized chairs and things like that. So you can see that we're coming up on Cornwallis Street. There will be a new crossing that will be put into place. And I just want to point out that at each of the new crossings, you're going to see accessible lights. You're going to see, I'm actually going to pause here. This is the most exciting part we just went through. Pardon? The space should work. Okay, thanks. You'll see, so those are gonna be where the pads are for, you know, if you have a cane, then you're gonna be able to have the, what are those called, tactile mats? There's gonna be sound devices when you cross streets, so when you push the button, you'll hear the sound, and then also flashing, just for extra safety. Here is, this brick building on the right is the Kenfall Historic Center. And that's gonna be kind of the hub, so we want people to gather there, we want people to leave their bikes, this is where the bus stop is, we want people to go in and learn all about Kenfall in that place, so that's gonna be, there's gonna be seating along there. The other accessible piece I wanted to note, as we move forward, is that color is really important, and more importantly, kind of the tone of the color, so the lights versus the darks and what that looks like. Our very own Bernie Zink, who sits on our accessibility committee, talks a lot about how that's really important to him when he's navigating curbs, when he's navigating crosswalks, all those pieces. So you can see that really we've just widened out what is now the sidewalk to make it more accessible. There will be a lot of education and signage along here to make sure that people know who to yield to know that for these green crossings, that cars, you know, it's a crossing here, so everybody has to be very aware. There's a lot of safety things, much like there would be if it was just a sidewalk. You're always looking out for cars as they come out of the driveways.
Certainly.
So Rachel, it is two-way, right?
Yes.
So if there's cyclists, they can be going west and east?
Yes, yeah, same thing with pedestrians, same thing
Same
with
thing.
everything.
Okay.
Yep, yep. And this is a really common model that you see in a lot of places.
Yep.
So when we get to, do I just click again? Yeah. So when we get to Webster Street, excuse me, this is where the decision was made because of logistics that we actually pull the cycling piece out onto the road, and pedestrians and folks with mobility usages actually stay along the sidewalk here. So here you'll see that right now we have bollards put in. One of the things that we'd also propose is that we would put in planters, again, to increase beautification. But these are pieces that are all up for discussion. And this is the only section, of course, that is on the road.
Rachel, could we do both along there?
What do you mean both?
Planters and.
Yeah,
bollards?
in fact, that's what we had talked about, is that in between the bollards, we would have planters as well. I think, you know, when we talk about accessibility, there's also this perception of safety as much as the safety itself. So we look at people who have, like, in our Women on Wheels programs, we have 3 or 4 bikers there that use their recumbent bikes or different types of bikes. They want to be able to be seen. They don't feel comfortable being out in traffic. We're thinking of them. When we're trying to get the north end or the east end to be able to get their kids to bike to school and promote active and safe routes to school, we want to make sure that kids and parents feel that there's not a chance that cars are going to kind of go over there. So this is why that separate bike lane is really important now, and why we wouldn't just have kind of a shoulder of the road piece. That's a really important piece here. Dave, if I'm missing anything. And then this would pop right into the trail, and that's where they would continue on. And then everything's gone. And I'm just gonna use this other one just because Kirsten made it, and it's really awesome, but this is the flyover. So if you were,
Rachel?
Yes.
I think you have to go to the other video, I think it might just start running.
what other video?
Press escape.
It may run, but
In the other window?
It's okay.
It's
It's
behind it.
okay? Okay,
I think
good.
it's fine.
Keep going.
So this is what it looks like from above. One of the things when we did our consultations with the active transportation plan, we heard from a lot of people linking AT with accessibility. A lot of that is the safest form and the way they would feel the most comfortable downtown, both walking and biking, is if there were traffic calming measures. One of the ways that we're tackling that with this piece is our department is talking about where can we place as many trees as possible. Trees provide that natural shade, that's an accessible piece, but they also have a little bit more of an enclosure on the street, so cars just naturally slow down. So those are all the things that we talked about. We actually heard, interestingly enough, from Kings Riverside Court, those were the folks that really said traffic calming is a really important piece. We don't actually feel comfortable walking into the downtown because cars are moving too fast. We don't feel comfortable crossing the street. Here you can see the part in front of Webster Street.
Rachel?
Yep. That's good. Okay.
When you talk about traffic calming, in particularly in front of Kings Riverside Court, can you just elaborate a little bit more on what traffic calming means, what that looks like? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just using their words, and this is all in our AT plan in the feedback section. But one of the things that we heard loud and clear is that when cars go speeding past, they really don't feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable because they're slower crossing their road. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable even walking down the sidewalk. This is also why we did that work in front of Patty's, because we had talked to them and they had said, we can't get past Patty's Pub with someone holding on to us as a support while we use a walker. It's not wide enough. And so we had folks from Kings Riverside in particular who just would avoid that part of town altogether. We also heard about things that it's too hot downtown, we need more trees, hence the shade. We heard we need more seating, and if there's more places to sit downtown, we're more likely to spend more money, but we just can't carry as much because there's not many places to go for breaks. So we're slowly incorporating all those comments into the things that we're doing. Does that make sense from a traffic
Yes.
calming? Really, it's just calming down traffic, slow down. This can be done with bump outs. This can be done with with things like, trees and enclosures. This can be done by, in this case, putting a bike lane there to kind of close the lane a little bit further. That can slow down traffic as well. It can also be done by the more people that are using the sidewalk and active transportation routes. Cars just generally have to slow down. But we try not to use people as bumpers. And then you can see there, that's where it would cross over. This section here from River Street, we're still working on it. Hey, Dave?
The river onto the
Yeah.
existing trail. The existing trail that you see in the darker pavement area. It was paved, 15 years ago now, I guess. That utility pole that you see here has guy wires, and Kirsten didn't digitize the now sidewalk that's on River Street. That was not there when we paved that section of trail in the early 2000s. Now there's a sidewalk there that everything kind of goes out of alignment when the paved trail of the Harvest Moon, we swooped it around that pole instead of moving the poles and the guy wires back 15 years ago. So I think it's a little realignment. You can see here where the new green, we'll say, crosswalk doesn't line up with the sidewalk, lines up with the bike. So we're gonna make some changes and probably come really straight across on that side of the pole to make a straighter. It will no doubt mean another pole and maybe the relocation of one of the decorative lamps that is there by the sidewalk on River Street. But that part is, we're just working those details out now before the final plans are created.
And another piece too is the green crosswalks are really visible and they're lovely. There is concern that it's slippery, the paint could be slippery. So we're looking at other municipalities and what they have done. It's certainly really visible. It's certainly, from a safety perspective, you come up upon that and it's really bright. So anyway, these are all.
May not be solid paint like that.
Yeah.
It'll be a form of still green and either double lines or the tiger stripe or something along that line.
So these are the pieces that we're looking at for best practice still, but hopefully you understand the general piece of it. Something else? Anything else that you can think of that would be?
For calming measures and things?
Well, just in general, where our thoughts are on all of this. Obviously, this crossing here is, that would be new. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. Yeah, right there. So along Cornwallis Street, that would be a new crossing, that one there. We would, this is, you want to talk about traffic calming, so we're gonna also keep the current crossings, and this would be in addition to that. So that's really something that will help kind of support people being downtown and being comfortable with that as well.
We expect to utilize the new strobe low solar ones that are more affordable, and we don't have any of them in town now, so that would be sort of the first pilot for us to try them at this intersection. But,
this intersection will be the dance party section with
strobe lights.
I think that's fair. I think that's it. Yeah, this is, I can't tell you how much Kirsten did this work, so it's really great. She worked really hard on it. So again, thanks to her. And I'm gonna pass it over to CAO Troke, because I know that I've probably missed something and he's been taking notes.
Thank you, and thank you both. I appreciate it. Couple of pieces, I guess, first of all, and what you notice is the biggest piece is there's that stretch on Webster where the discussion has taken it to moving the pathway to be partially on the street. And part of that is driven off of, the costing to move those telephone poles is $250,000, something in that ballpark. So, but part B is over and above that. Anytime that you do any kind of movement like that with Nova Scotia Power now, there's a requirement for easements. And so then there's an entire process of negotiating those easements. So both from a costing perspective and also from a logistics perspective, it creates a lot more issues. So Ahmad touched on that in his presentation, but I wanted to make sure kind of folks understood why that is being proposed at this time. The questions that I received back from council, and most of them have to do with just clarification. So I just want to make sure folks are all hearing the same things that folks have come in to chat with me with. So the first question is, how wide is Webster Street behind the arena? So essentially the street behind the Webster section behind the arena is 1.5 lanes wide, meaning you're going to have 1.5 what would be traditional size lanes from a spacing perspective. Will the separation between the multi-use trail and Webster be removed in the wintertime for snow removal? And I think the short answer is it will depend on what they are. If it's the bollards that are approached that are were discussed tonight, not likely that you would have to. But if you had something that was more of a solid surface, it might mean that we might need to have something to allow for snow removal to be dealt with there. Is Station Lane becoming one way? No. What is the impact on emergency vehicles? So Dave, as the traffic authority, has reviewed it. He's also walking the route with the fire chief, I think, Wednesday?
Wednesday morning, 8:30.
Wednesday. And there's been basically, so the chief has everything that you have here, and including has seen the interactive piece, but also just, looking for those feedback. Is there subtle things that need to be adjusted? Are there pieces there that we need to hear more from on them? What is the impact on the delivery vehicles at Jason's? So if you look at kind of the loading bay there, it's on a bit of an angle. So most of the longer trucks now are coming in at an angle. But again, it would be the piece if there was, for some reason, a delivery vehicle that was exceptionally longer or needed some kind of subtle adjustment. That'd be something that we'll be talking to them as we would look at finalizing what is going to happen specifically in that area. And then, and Rachel did a great job in touching on this. A number of folks asked about the connection to the accessibility plan. And Rachel touched on, we've got audio and visual, you've got tactile pads at the crossing, and then obviously the contrasting colors is a big part when you have individuals with any kind of visibility challenge. And those colors actually help identify, are we now talking about rise over run and all those other pieces when you're looking at climbing over curbs and so on. So those were the feedback pieces that I received from council, and I want to thank everybody for the conversation. And obviously, any additional feedback that we're getting specifically that would make any considerations around change, we'd be bringing them back. So I think I will stop there because I think there's more conversation going to happen here tonight.
All right, thank you, CAO. So what we'll do now is take questions to our directors and the CAO with regards to what we've just seen. Councillor Zavian.
Thank you, and if Kirsten's watching, thank her, or if she's watching at home, thank you. I have a couple of questions, because this video is different than what we were presented last month. Is the parking on that part of Webster completely gone now, on the left side? Because there was parking in some of the original pictures.
That's correct. One of Ahmad's concepts, I think he had an older version that was done by a consultant a number of years ago, and that did show parking on the arena side of Webster. The width isn't there. We'd be squeezing that single lane down to a 3-meter lane or less, and I feel that's not, although parking's important, having that lane and a half, a 4.5 meter lane is the important thing to have there, so there will be no parking.
Thank you. Will that start by Independent, or will they backtrack a little bit in front of Patty's there? Because there's still 2 spots there, right? Or will it just start from Station Lane part down?
From Station,
Yeah, okay.
from Station going west.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank you. The other thing I was wondering, the only thing, it looks great, I just wonder, Station Lane kind of scares me because that's such a tight area, and I'm not an engineer. I sell clothes. But I went the other day with the tape measure, and I don't see 3 meters there. So are you going up into the property where the Covington Station is and taking some of?
Not their property.
Okay.
The existing curb that you see there,
Right.
it makes a bit of a slope.
Right.
So, where that curb is actually private curb.
Right.
You see that I saw a few property pins as well when I was over there measuring with Ahmad a month or more ago. So what we would propose is actually, sort of a unit block retaining wall. It's, only need a course or a course and a half, a barrier course and shower course. But what that would do would be, along that wall or the curb of the Pharmasave in particular, I guess,
Yeah.
is the steepest property. There's room now for a 3 meter or 10-foot walkway,
Okay.
multi-use pathway, and one retaining wall that would be level or just slightly above the existing curb, and that face would be on the inside face of the 10 meter or 3 meter 10-foot
Okay, and the roads
walkway.
won't change,
Won't change,
they
no.
can't anyway, there's no room there.
No room to
anyway.
change, no, we
Yeah.
can't, we wouldn't move their curb, but there is enough room, there's essentially a little over 12 feet, so
Okay.
the 10-foot or 3 meter multi-use, and then the 2-foot retaining wall.
Okay, and the last thing, I don't know if you can answer this, because you probably haven't tendered it out, but you don't know what kind of timeline or the whole project would be, because I think, and that's where I'll go into a minute, I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
question I get.
You know, honestly, the only section that's gonna require true construction,
Mhm.
unless we go with a permanent curb on Webster, but if it's either a temporary curb and/or the flexible bollards and planters, most of the work on Webster's painting,
Mhm.
line painting and the bollards. The Justice Way and Station Lane would be the removal of the existing concrete sidewalk, and basically the placement of most likely asphalt. We're gonna price it both ways.
Okay.
Asphalt will be, 2/3 the price of concrete, or
Mhm.
maybe even a little less than 2/3. We'll look at the pricing when it comes in, but timing, they could do that size of a project in under a month, and we'll tender it ideally if everything, everyone
And-
says go.
And between the walking, I guess, and the bike trail part of it, will there be something, like some kind of meridian between them? For
Not
the-
everywhere. I mean,
Okay.
most of them have a grass strip now where the decorative light standards are, so there
Mhm.
we'll be squeezing that grass strip down to a little narrower, but in most cases, there'll still be a grass strip between the existing curb on Station Lane.
No, I mean between, on the active thing, there's the 3 meters, the 1.5,
Right.
so,
It's just a line.
okay, there's no.
Oh, you
'cause
mean
the
on
other one
you mean
looked
on
like there
Webster?
On all of them, it looked like there was a barricade between them.
Nope.
So it's just gonna be open 3 meters with dashes in the middle, and
Yep.
so easy for plowing and
Yep.
in the wintertime, okay.
Correct,
All
yeah,
right.
easy
Just
for
a line.
plow. It's just a line.
Okay,
Especially on Webster, yeah, that line
Which
is
is a
just,
really common
is
practice
just
for multi-use
okay.
trails.
I thought they were gonna
Okay.
build some kind of wall between,
not a wall per se,
Okay.
but regardless of what goes on Webster in particular, that will be, that actually, a section could be plowed with actually like a half ton.
Okay.
There's room there, that's
You're
a
talking
true
about
3
the
meters.
on-street,
the Webster part.
Because you're talking about.
Well,
Yeah,
all
I
of them
am.
in general, like.
Well,
when I-
in general, there's two different types of,
Yeah.
but certainly the wider ones that are the multi-use back on Webster, in Station Lane are, it would be,
You use
would
a
be-
pickup or something, just to,
yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
honestly, it would be the same sort of thing
Yeah.
as the double wide sidewalk
Okay.
in the downtown. We still use
Yep.
a sidewalk machine on that,
Mhm.
but it'll just be much like the downtown sidewalks that are
Okay.
10 plus feet wide, so
Okay.
same idea.
And I have one last question, kind of unrelated to this, but, maybe not a good night to ask you, but there's a lot of loose bricks downtown on those sidewalks, and I mean, somebody's gonna fall and trip soon, so I picked up a couple this morning in front of me.
Right.
But anyway, I know that's part of another thing, but there is a little safety concern there, so, anyway, thank you.
They are a curse, but thank you.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So my real question is around, and it's more of the concept of it, and it's been, I've revisited the AT plan, but it's been a while, so I've sort of just picked out excerpts from it, but I just sort of want to hear a little bit around the walking piece in conjunction with the cycling piece, like in terms of the safety in the community, and what that kind of looks like, what that feels like when people are walking on these sidewalks and there's cyclists to the left of them. I want a little bit of feedback or a little bit of a little bit more of a concept around that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, much like traffic calming on the street, multi-use pathways are traffic calming as well. So you're not going to get people who are on a group ride going down this lane. Those
Mhm.
folks are gonna stick on the road, they're heading out, they're there to get their heart rate up. These are,
Mhm.
we're talking about people who use cycling as a form of active transportation.
Okay.
So when these lanes, or where these lanes exist in other places, then it's very much, you know, kind of share the road, rules of the road.
Mhm.
Bicycles on trails and roads have to have a sound device, like a bell.
Mhm.
That's the law,
Okay,
the provincial law.
okay.
So if there is a cyclist coming up behind a walker, if there's no one coming on the other lane, then they just come out and pass around them, just
Mhm.
like you would.
Okay.
And then same thing with walkers, you know, as there's no one around you, then you can walk. It's still 1.5 meters wide, so you're still able to have someone with a mobility device or a stroller, and they can
Mhm.
walk beside them, and they're still in that half lane. Yeah.
Okay.
There is gonna be no one policing there saying you just touched the center line, so I'm gonna have to give you a ticket. That's not a thing.
No, of course not.
But absolutely, part of it is education. And don't forget, this is also linked to the work that we're doing this year around the West Main Street crossing.
Yes.
We're working on getting folks to Miners Marsh. And we're also working with the county and their active transportation plan.
Yes.
So it's gonna start to become what you see moving forward when we talk about multi-use pathways.
Right.
So there is a transition as always, but this, we did not make this model up. This is a very standard model where it is shared
Absolutely.
road, yeah.
Okay.
But there is no place on this road for speeding cyclists that are in a peloton.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of places where they have these in larger cities, then you see a lot of families, a lot of kids, a lot of people using transportation. And then because there is such a high demand for cycling, they have a whole other separated cycling route. That's not what this is.
Okay.
But wouldn't that be a great problem to have? But we're
Yeah.
not dealing with that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the integration.
So I don't picture, you know, 10 bikes coming down the road.
Right.
And everybody's
Okay.
jumping off.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay,
but there, yeah,
Okay.
part of it is education.
thank you very
Yeah.
much. That's really helpful.
Thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of things. I'm glad you're going over and talking with the fire department, because I had talked to several members, and they were concerned, especially about their aerial truck, which is 42 feet long. So my question is about cost. About 3 years ago, this came up, and we were told it was gonna be 800,000. And no, we couldn't do it for that. So now we've been told this is gonna be about $1 million. So from the last tree planted to, are we still sticking that this is gonna be $1 million?
Not this project, will be less than that, I think.
It'll be
right?
less than $1
I
million.
think it'd be less than the 800. This is from Leverett to, like, this year, we'll spend that on other pieces, like the upgrading of the trail, you know, north of Shanix, enhancing, you know, there's portions of that I think we're at 1.25, is that right, Rachel? 1.3 this year?
Yeah.
But that includes, you know, 150 for the, just carry over the things we didn't do in 2021 because we couldn't tender it. There was still some things going on. It was COVID. It was the Aboriginal consultation still had to be done in 21. So nothing got tendered in 21. So we had some carryover from that year that put us to the 1.25 or 3 million. But this portion, I don't see this portion being, I see it being less than $750,000 to do.
So right from Leverett down to?
Lever it down, because we're saving a fair chunk of money on the Webster piece by not having to tear up that sidewalk and move power poles and things. The section of Justice to Webster, Justice including Webster all the way to, Justice and Station all the way to Webster, is somewhere in the 250 range, and, you know, 300, plus the, you know, there's some bike shelters and the other things, but the parts that are truly sidewalk or multi-use pathway won't approach $1 million. No.
Okay.
The budget that includes, like, we're doing line painting and signage and things on Belcher Street and, Cornwallis Avenue towards Aldershot. That's all part of this year's, AT, first major phase, and then the next 2 years will be the downtown pieces for sidewalk,
Can you
Improvements.
explain, and I heard you talk about a wall, I had a real concern going, in front of Pharmasave, because that's about a
Slope.
30-degree slope.
It's steepish, yeah. This is just the aerial, but,
In the
Yeah,
previous
okay,
one, it
cool.
just shows everything is flat.
it's flat, yeah. So this, the section that's in front of, I wanted to pay in there, the section, whoa, let's go back here. Telling you how to pause, yeah. Where the curb is high, there'll be a retaining wall block, from pretty much level with the curb, and that face will be a flat face, and then the 3-meter AT route will be from there to the curb essentially, or there to the
So
back of light standards.
they'll take out the
There'll be a
existing
step.
concrete.
Oh, yeah, well, the existing concrete sidewalk is gone.
So,
That
yeah,
curb.
the sidewalk, the
But
curb and
but
everything will stay the
that's
same.
not the curb on not our curb and gutter, but the curb on towards, say, Pharmasave.
Okay,
The wall will be tight to that
tight,
curb.
okay.
And
okay.
that will just be a wall.
And everything
it'll-
from
it'll
there will
stop.
just be flat.
It'll drop roughly 1.5 feet down to the 2% grade on the new AT asphalt.
Okay, perfect.
That
Thank
answer
you.
it, Craig? Yeah.
Yep, no,
Okay.
that's perfect, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell. Thank you. We've had a concern from a citizen about the Kentville Heritage Society location. And am I right in thinking that we have no intention to move the Kentville Heritage Society out of there and put the old VIC back in as is recommended in the AT plan? I would think that was just a suggestion by the,
Yeah, and I do remember whether that was the AT plan or the accessibility, I think that was the accessibility plan.
okay,
No, and that is a council decision. It was a council
Yeah.
decision to move it out.
Yeah.
No, that is not our plan. Our plan is exactly what you see here. In fact, what we're trying to do is to bring people to the Kentville Heritage Site.
right.
That's kind of the stopping point downtown. There'll be a new kiosk there that talks about downtown
Yeah.
businesses, things to do.
Yeah,
and-
because it's perfect there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, that's a historical building that we want
Yeah.
people to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I
Yeah,
just wanted
no,
to
that is not
put that out there. and
our
make
secret
sure.
agenda, no.
Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell touched it briefly here, but I just wanted to say that I'm encouraged to see that all of the departments seem to be working in conjunction with each other on a project this size, because it does allow for planning and parks and recreation and economic development to get at the table and have the same discussion. So when I was speaking with Kirsten and Lindsay, they were explaining to me that this becomes sort of like a satellite visitor center, not within the building, but rather on site, and allows for people to, because I think it has been identified that a visitor information section of town, it being downtown, is helpful, but at its current location on the west end is probably the most accessible location for it to be in. So you're kind of torn, but this seems like a perfect solution for that issue. I'm also encouraged to see that there's talk about the walk and cycle to school program that we had started eons ago. But as I sit on the PTA, I do hear that children from the East End, or rather parents on the East End, have concerns of sending their children through downtown. And this would obviously make that much safer for especially older children who want to do it independently, but also for families traveling together to school. I think it works really well with the existing programs and plans that we have in place in recreation, but also in our community development portfolios as well. So I'm really encouraged to see that all of that is happening, and that I think with some education pieces and just some public awareness, we could really beef this up nicely. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate all that. I met with Holly. If you remember, she spoke at the town hall around accessibility, and she runs our Women on Wheels program. And she said that her group can't actually, they have to decide if they're going to leave Kentville or if they're going to go west, because they can't safely navigate the downtown, and how much this one particular component of our larger AT plan, which imagine when it's completed, how amazing it's going to be, but this will actually change her ability and the group's ability to access various parts of town, which is really great. And certainly, you know, we've talked about it at this council, but finding ways to pull in the north and east end is something that we're hoping that this really achieves and accomplishes. Certainly the bridge is a part of that, and I know that letter is on this agenda tonight. But there's a lot of pieces there, but this is that one piece. And as for the table of the different departments, very much when it comes to a council priority, all departments kind of get their heads together and figure out how to move forward on it. So you're right, we're also talking about beautification, we're also talking about budget, we're also talking about what's underground as we look at things, and how can over the next 3 years we really improve the downtown. So I appreciate it.
Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. This is not a question. This is a comment. And I wish I had have been here in the very beginning when this plan was being rolled out of accessibility and active transportation, because this really makes my heart sing on this project. I know, it's still early stages, there's still things you might want to change and whatever, but as a town to have something like this, I think you guys are rock stars. I think this is a proud moment for us, and I just want to say thank you to all involved.
Thank you. I do want to remind folks that this is part of the Harvest Moon Trail. And so this is the last piece, am I wrong? This is the last piece on the Harvest Moon Trail that goes from Grand Pré all the way down to Clare, Digby Clare, that where it isn't completed. And so the amount of opportunity for people who, as a destination trail that will be coming through our town, it is really exciting. There's a lot of great things about it. Yeah. I'm looking at Kathy because she represents us on the Trail Coalition.
All right, are there any further questions for staff on this matter? All right, Councillor Zabian, you have a request of council.
I do. Thank you, Mayor Snow. Over the last month or so, I've heard from a lot of people in the business community, and I think the presentation was great tonight. I think they would probably enjoy something likewise presented either by these two guys, they're good at it, if they want to do it again, or if KBC wants to get involved. I mean, that is their forte, the business community. I just think it would behoove everybody for them to be invited, which I think we did years ago, invite them in and do a proper presentation, and just so that they kind of have a timeline and what it's going to look like for the downtown. They are the stakeholders, and I think that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zabian. CAO, is that within the doable? And I'll also ping off of the deputy mayor to find out if perhaps this something could be brought together with KBC if somehow we could coordinate our staff and their folks and make a call. I guess what we have to be very clear is that this would be a presentation of the plan. This is not a consultation, because we have already put the wheels in motion as far as funding and that goes. So COO, I'll.
Thank you, and yes, and I think to Councillor Zabian's point is we'll have a conversation with KBC and staff, and we'll be able to kind of see what we can pull together on that, and we'll inform council of that from there.
Excellent. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the KBC last meeting was sort of mid-May. And I'm just gonna, there's an excerpt from the minutes there with regards to the active transportation route. And the minutes are as such. So the KBC board unanimously agreed that the proposed active transportation route does not negatively impact traffic flow for business. And that there did seem to be a little bit of confusion about one of the slides that said Station Lane would be one way, which it is not one way, so we know that now. And then there was just a comment around KBC, a better job at getting some of this information out to the business community, sort of getting ahead of it a little bit faster just to prevent some of that misinformation from circulating. But when we talk about the AT site is now live on our website, we have the frequently asked links to the capital projects. We were talking about everything tonight, and I did say to Genevieve that I would bring this back to the board, which I will, but probably some of the folks from the board are watching this tonight. I almost see KBC being able to do something with this and bringing it forward to the community at large. I mean, I think they would probably feel comfortable with that, maybe with some input from from Director Bedingfield and Director Bell. And I don't think it has to be too complicated, and whether that just means pointing people to our site or whether it means an actual presentation, then, but I think it's something that I would like to see taken back to KBC and get a comfort level from them.
So can we count on the two of you and then report back to council and let us know how things went?
And yep.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so recommendations and reports. We'll start with the recommendations, and the recommendations arising from the CAC meeting on May the 9th will be read and moved by Deputy Mayor Savage.
Okay. Oops. Thank you. Sorry, I think I hit it. At the May 9th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke described the municipal boundary review and laid out plans to meet these provincial requirements using existing staff. Council Advisory Committee recommends that staff coordinate the 2022 municipal boundary review process and bring a report to Council at the October 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee. I so move.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Councillor Huntley. It has been moved and seconded that council approve staff's coordination of the 2022 municipal boundary review process and bring a report to council on October of 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve staff's coordination of the 2022 municipal boundary review process and bring a report to council at the October 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. CAO, was there anything that you wanted to provide us with regards to that boundary now that we've passed the motion?
The only thing I'll say is that our Jennifer West here has basically a bit of a website to start this process ready to go live, and with the idea that we'll be able to start taking feedback from citizens on it. So as soon as we're ready to put that up, I'll send the link out to council and everybody will be able to see that documentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. At the May 9th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Director Gentleman reviewed current practices around protecting heritage buildings and gave recommendations for a voluntary heritage bylaw in Kentville. CAC recommends that Council direct the CAO to pursue drafting a heritage bylaw for review by Council. I so move.
Thank you.
Did you want me to read the?
I guess
briefing note?
if you went with the recommendations, because we have tasked the CAO and staff to draft the bylaw. However, in the briefing note recommendations, there's actually 3 items that they
Yes.
need to go forward. So what I've done is I'll get each of you to give me kind of your top number on each of those, and then if you have any further information, is to put it in an email CC'd to all of council and the CAO, and that will give staff, kind of where they begin. So I guess on the briefing note recommendations, Deputy Mayor.
So I will read the briefing notes.
Just go with the recommendations. I think
Okay.
I think council's pretty familiar.
Recommendation, so council considers the following items with regards to the proposed heritage bylaw. Number 1, that it be voluntary versus mandatory. Number 2, that there's a committee struck and needs. Committee structure and needs. And thirdly, the financial consideration. Direction will assist with drafting a heritage bylaw for council's future consideration.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So what I'm looking for here is, the first question will be, do you wish it to be voluntary or mandatory? The second is, we're just going to, I'm gonna say, spitball this size of committee. And then financial is a yes or no, so which means that they could get a grant or no grant. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor. Voluntary or mandatory?
I would say voluntary.
Okay, size of the committee?
The size and the composure, the composition of same, or just the size of it?
Let's go with size, and let's do this as the number of citizens that would be on it, because typically we would have 2 members of council on it. So go with how many citizens you think should be with it if there were 2 members of council.
I'd say 4 citizens.
Okay? And financial, a yes or a no?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Gerard, mandatory or voluntary?
Voluntary.
Okay, size of committee?
6 with 2 councillors is good?
Okay, finance or no?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Huntley,
Voluntary,
okay? Committee, size?
5, 2 council, 3 citizen,
Okay, 3 citizens.
and yes,
Finance,
financial.
yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell,
Oh, yes, okay.
voluntary or mandatory?
Yes, I would like to see it voluntary.
Okay.
However, there are different ways to do voluntary. And I think we need to have a discussion on the way that we would like to see voluntary done. One way is, as I suggested to council, that the committee would go out and designate which buildings and inform the owners that their building is going to go onto the list, and then the owners would come back if they didn't want it on the list. So that's voluntary. The other voluntary is by having them come in on their own and register. I have a problem with it coming in to register because it's much like the organ donation program, where it was, for a few years, we could tick off the box if we wanted our organs donated, and they weren't getting enough organs. So now everybody is in, but if you want out, then you let them know that you want out. And I would prefer to see something like that, that we have a committee, the committee selects and puts them on a list, and then gives the owner a time to opt out. So that, I'm voluntary that way. I'm not in favor of a registration process, because I think that is ineffective in this case.
Okay.
Okay?
The size of the committee?
Size of the committee, yes, 4 citizens and, or 4 citizens and 2 council.
Okay,
And I do think that we should have some financial support.
okay. Councillor York,
Voluntary, 4 citizens, financial support.
okay. Councillor Zabian,
Voluntary, 4 citizens, and financial support.
okay. And I'm a voluntary, 5 committee, just to make it uneven, and finance, yes. So CAO, you've got the numbers?
Absolutely, thank you. And I would also like to say thank you, Councilor Maxwell, for sending out the article. I think
that's very
that
good.
also you spoke to that point tonight. Yeah.
thank you.
That's good.
All right, so Deputy Mayor, that, your job wasn't too laborious tonight. Councillor York, did you have something?
Sorry, just
No.
as a comment, I suppose, as CAO Troke takes this away. When we do take a look at creating a heritage bylaw, are we able to expand what, because it's a municipal program, so we have a little bit more control over what would be considered heritage? Can we look at ways of expanding what would be a historical significance so that the history of the town isn't whitewashed as we go through the process?
Absolutely, I think there's a piece here where we'll have to look at it with those other lenses. I mean, just as we do with our accessibility work.
Perfect.
And I think also as part of that, that's going to enter into a number of discussions around even names that we would not see today, but other cultures might associate with some of the things that we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
So CEO, as part of this, I guess the first draft of the bylaw that we get, I guess I'm envisioning something that's pretty bare bones.
Yep.
And then I think the committee would roll up their sleeves and really get down and dirty and get the real information into the bylaw that we want to see going forward.
Yep, that's correct. And you know, in fact, it's one of those pieces that the trickiest part, so having gone through this, this before in another location, is getting into the scoring mechanism, because it takes, you know, a considerable amount of thought and knowledge around when you're trying to differentiate between different pieces. So that's a piece that, you know, you're gonna need to get the right people in the room to understand the historical aspect of some of this. So absolutely, it will start 20,000 feet and we'll drill it down.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Snow, I agree. I think that the committee should do most of the work on this. And, yeah, because I would like to see flexibility, you know, maybe a certain date, that if it falls, you know, under this date, then that building would be, you know, but I think that the committee should be involved in that, and I think we have lots of people in the town that could help us, so thank you.
All right, so moving on to our councillor reports, we'll start with Councillor Gerard. Oops.
Thank you, Worship. My dates are there for the last meeting in CAC. So the only thing I had in the last calendar month was Valley Waste Resource. So we had updates from a letter requesting financial support for beach waste. And I don't know whether anybody knows that this goes on, but there's a group that go to local beaches. I think about 80% is fishing, lost fishing stuff. There's some pictures on their website. We are going after some financial support from the feds for that. We currently have an equipment lease, and this is kind of neat. So there is a foam polystyrene densifier. So they can take a tractor trailer load of polystyrene cups and packaging and stuff like that, and it condenses down to about what would fit on a single pallet, which is kind of neat. So anyways, it's leased from us or through Scotia Recycling, which is a recycling plant out there. The status of the capital and operating budgets, we've gone through that. The extension of the TBR and the impact to the Kempful budget is $215,352. And this is another interesting piece moving forward. So right now you've seen the big trucks that leave the big containers. You know, some people want them in front of their driveway. So those trucks are about $350,000. And of course, the containers aren't as expensive, but what they want to do is buy containers that the loaders that we currently have that are also about $350,000. They've got connections on the front and they can just go in and move them around. So eliminating 2 or 3 trucks at over $250,000 a piece is fairly exciting for what could be coming down the future. And that is my report.
Excellent, thank you very much. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Meetings, same as Councillor Gerard. Kings Remo had a meeting. There was an updated membership where myself will be replacing Mayor Sandra Snow for the town of Kempful as a rep. There was presentations on wind, rain, flash freeze events, pandemic updates, all the things that will happen in nature for sure, and a lot of discussion on comfort centers and making people awareness of where they are. So the database will be updated. There'll be upcoming training, and they talked about management of spontaneous volunteers. There was a special meeting and review of and approval of the capital budget, KPPT meeting. I wasn't in attendance for Zoom as the building's internet was down, so I missed that one. King's Transit, there was a meeting, and I'll go to my notes for a second. One of the biggest things has been a discussion about fuel and the cost that's going on with the buses. Well, that's no surprise, I'm sure, to anybody. And it's not going down. The costs are still going up for municipalities. So they talked a lot about that. There's also drainage issues at the garage. So like every 3 months, there's needing work done. It like $1,000 a pop. So they're trying to get an engineer in. Well, they've already had him in free of charge, and but now they're going to be sending out an RFP to the public. Again, they talked about the fuel costs for the core of, Berwick, Wolfville, and Kempville is the core, $33,000+ in diesel by the end of April. So it's kind of a scary number when you think about it. They've had 19 work orders for repairs on the vehicles, and they also talked about the 4 donated buses that came from Halifax Transit. They're still being worked on. Originally the discussion was when they were donated from Halifax, how much money do we want to spend on those buses to get them, I'll say, fixed to, we didn't know what we were up against. So I think the basic number we said was like $40,000 like for each bus. And of course the question came up was, is this worth it? Is it worth to get donated buses compared to wait for that one new one? But it is worth it to go the route that we have been right now. Especially, I'm sure there's still back orders on buses that people are waiting for. And one of the things that, when we were at our conference in White Point for NSFM, they talked about canoe procurement company. And of course, my ears peaked because I kept thinking, if we need buses, like, can we get a cheaper price on that? Or we need a new street sweeper, can we save 50 grand on, going that route? So anyway, it was a big discussion about what's being spent, but what can be saved as well. And they also had a co-op student in from NSCC working in the shop. So I'm sure I'll learn a little bit more about that. Town events, a Hike for Hospice visit. I went in and did my little donation, and I saw Councilor York and Councilor Lexi Meisner. They were there, so we took their picture and got that out, and of course, Lions Breakfast. I attended my first NSFM Spring Conference. It was, wow, insightful for me. They had a guest speaker there, Unleashing Your Greatness. And one of the things I like about conferences is that it takes you out of your norm of working in your own town, and it makes you feel like you're in big places. Because then it gets your mind creative. Well, if they're doing that, why can't we? That sort of thing. So I really enjoyed that. Honorable John Lohr was there. Discussion on the non-resident taxes, municipal success stories, a presentation on social media channel usage for elected officials, also strategies for developing mutual understanding with peers and constituents. Then there was the next day, diversity and inclusivity in municipalities, 3 presenters and discussions on NSFM organizational changes, and then the day wrapped up. So I would recommend, if you've never been to one, go to one of these meetings for sure. And even on the arrival on the evening, they had the registration, regional, rural, and town caucus meetings. A few discussions included, RCMP, policing, again, the non-resident tax, because there was quite a discussion with some municipalities that they are a tourist area, and people not only come now to visit, but now they've decided to live there. So, what they're contributing, and so it was a big worry there, but we all know how it ended up in the end. So that was good. And then when I get to the end, I really just put in a few of my learnings of roles of municipalities, Atlantic Climate Caucus, which I really like this chapter that I'm involved in. They have a few meetings a month. But, they talked about, everybody's talking about climate change. And, they talked about Canada and where it sits. And, I was talking to Mayor Snow about it. And I said, when you listen to the numbers, Canada as a whole, they're talking a lot, but they're not really coming up to par with where we should be. But who's being the most successful is municipalities. And that's where it starts. So I was almost proud actually sitting there thinking about, we've talked a lot, but we're planning things just as we're talking about our AT plan. So I was pretty proud of that. And then my last is, I was sent a note by Julian Meisner, and she is with the with the Mentoring Plus strategy, and she's their coordinator. And I said that I would, and Dan said he didn't mind me speaking about it, just a couple of notes on what they have been doing over the past month. And there's 5 really good topics. There's high school strategy, there's the financial literacy piece, upcoming career share, post-secondary, and employment agencies. And they have been busy. On the high school strategy piece, NECEC has integrated a multidisciplinary group. There's 8 mentors there into their grade 12 business development class. And there's 15 students. That has been amazing, and I have participated in that. The kids are fabulous. Financial literacy, there's a focus group of mentors, high school and post-secondary faculty and admin, and recent graduations gathering for a discussion about the opportunity retirees and mentors have to help improve financial literacy for students graduating into the world of work. It's like a good reality check. And then it talks about upcoming career share, which will be on June 9th. We're holding it in the NECEC library. The event will showcase up to 10 mentors from various careers and industry sectors, and students from all grades will be invited to cycle through the mentors for a chance to broaden their interest on the career options. We talk about post-secondary. NSCC conversations with local principals are in motion to discuss partnering opportunities for the fall of 2022 when students are able to return back to site activities. And there's also out in Middleton, a mentoring lounge, farm cafe. And Sarah McDonald is actually running that program with the help of a great board. An active MPS mentor will be taking a mentor ambassador role and will host the mentoring lounge on site in the weeks to come. So there'll be more to hear about that. And then with employment agencies, they're working with VCLA, and you know what, I can go on, there's many notes, but I think the gist of it is, I think people have to listen to how much work is actually being done by this group, because they are contributing to us in many ways. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I've attended all the council meetings and all the CIC meetings. In April 25th, we had our capital budget meeting where we went over the capital budget. On the 29th, I had the police commission, which I'll talk about in a minute. On the 13th of May, I had the inclusion and accessibility committee meeting. And on May 20th, another police commission meeting. So Town of Kentville events, I am attending the Kentville Hemlock Woolly Algid committee meetings, just mostly for my own interest, but I like to report back to council so you have an idea of what's going on. In this meeting, the ravine update was given. Initial work has taken place. That means the removal and collection of surface waste. So there's stuff that's buried under, you know, the mud and so on that still needs to go, but the surface waste has been cleaned up. Final assessment report will be in soon. It probably is at this point. 2 smudgings have taken place, and a planning meeting with Indigenous people is happening. We looked at the gorge survey results because, of course, there is HWA at the gorge, and 2 possible treatment costs were looked at. Interesting to note that the town of Kentville will be Nova Scotia leaders in this endeavor. So people are watching to see what we choose and how successful we are at keeping our trees. People who want to donate to the treatment of the hemlocks in the ravine and gorge can do so by going to the Blomidon Naturalist Society website and can make a donation there. The United States has been trying to protect their hemlocks much earlier than here because it came up the eastern seaboard. So they've been doing at it. And when they were asked, their committees were asked, what would you do? What would you have done differently? The response was, we would have saved more trees early on. So, which is something to keep in mind. This group continues to work on best practices for our ravine and gorge hemlocks, and I'm sure at some point they'll be in to make recommendations to council. So, very interesting. I also attended on May 1st the HWA Detection Day. So, what to look for if you're out in the woods and you're looking for the HWA. a wonderful turnout for this event. It was held at the Gorge. We learned what to look for to detect the HWA beetle, and then went into a section of the gorge to see if we could detect it. And the group I was in did not find any. However, an earlier group found it in another section of the gorge. So the gorge does have HWA right now. Kentville Heritage Society opening day and VON celebration, May 17th. Another wonderful event put on by the Kentville Heritage Society to celebrate this season's opening. So they're open now. And to open their display celebrating, that says 100 years, but it's actually 125 years of the VON in Kings County. Great turnout and excellent display on the history. If you haven't been over to look at it, you should go. It's very interesting. The police commission meeting on April 29th, we discussed criminal record checks, and a proposal will come forward concerning who has to pay for them and who doesn't, because that's up in the air a little bit and always has been. We discussed the Freedom Rally and the process that was followed in regards to complaints that were received. So the commission did receive some complaints. Crosswalk flags were a topic of discussion, and the police service at the time was getting ready and organizing for the Apple Blossom Festival, and I think by all accounts they did a wonderful job. So, with the Inclusion and Accessibility Committee meeting, we had a wonderful presentation by Mary Swetnam and Jackie Onescu on their research project, which looks at rural single moms in a recreation context. And what do they need to be able to access recreation services? A town hall update was given, and we learned Dalhousie University is helping us come up with a matrix to help us measure and assess our plan. And grants for accessibility right now are hard to come by because they're out for other things. However, all indications point to that changing in the near future. So, Craig Langell, our facility manager, is also working with Dalhousie to develop an allocation policy to help with allocating time in our recreation facilities, keeping in mind inclusion, equity, and diversity. So, for example, can we do bocce ball in the rink during the summertime for people? So. Bocce ball is pretty inclusive type of activity and so on. So rather than closing the rink down, can we make some space available for something like that? We are partnering with Sport Nova Scotia to pilot one person to program for equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And, oh yes, another police committee meeting. I arrived late to this meeting due to a calendar issue. And an employee and retirement barbecue is being planned by the chief with more details to follow. The force is ready for Apple Blossom. Speeding was discussed, and it is occurring in many locations through the town, which is not a surprise to anyone. Hopefully our traffic calming will help with that once we get the AT plan in. Possible solutions were looked at, including issuing more tickets, so beware. Our force is at full strength with two new hires, Angela Morrison and John Terrio. Ken Reed Jr. is the Community Liaison Officer, and Ashley Ettinger is the Community Crisis Navigator. And both of those positions will be really beneficial to our force and to the town of Kentville. There are many officers in new roles at the police force right now, but they all seem very enthusiastic about their new roles and so on, according to the chief. We also discussed the role of the RCMP in Nova Scotia, and if you've been following the paper, you know that there's big discussions going on about that, and the future of policing in our province. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Councillor York, I note that you're...
Yes.
Okay, did you have...
I did
go
have
ahead,
questions.
please.
And forgive me, Councillor, I can't remember if it was Director Bedingfield or you during the last council meeting you mentioned, and it might have been, again, like I say, Director Bedingfield, at the side of the gorge and at the ravine when it's open, there will be like boot washing or like boot cleaning stations. Are those coming? And forgive me if it wasn't you who was talking about it, but...
I haven't been up to the gorge much lately. I'm hoping that the stations are already set up.
Okay,
If they're not, I'm sure they'll be coming.
en route, okay, thank you.
And the ravine is still closed.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I too have attended all meetings as required. April the 20th was Investment Advisory Committee. The portfolio at that juncture was still north of 4 million. Our year-to-date money-weighted average net was 0.227% measured against the balanced income Canadian indices of 3.8, which was to the negative. So we are weathering, faring out well with respect to the markets. The markets obviously have two major things working against them, the war in Ukraine and the shutdown in China due to COVID. So we have moved some of our funds into 3 managed funds and the yields are as expected. April the 20th was KBC. I'll talk about that a little bit later. April 25th was REMO. Councillor Huntley covered that off nicely, but to her point, we covered off wind, rain events, wildfire preparedness, readiness, and pushing the REMO social media page, comfort centers. So as I say, let's just keep pushing that REMO Facebook site. There's a lot of really great information there to be prepared. And as most of council, or probably all of council has heard, it looks like our hurricanes and storms are going to be more plentiful in the coming months as compared to other years, so it's important to be prepared. April the 27th was Source Water Protection and Kemple Water Commission, where we had well field updates, a water report, a review of the Source Water Protection Plan, and KWC, where we reviewed the operating revenue and expenditures along with the engineer's report. May the 13th was Inclusion and Accessory Advisory Committee. To Councillor Maxwell's point, we had excellent presentations from Jackie and Mary Swetnam, aligning Kentville's accessibility plan and municipal recreation role in supporting rural low-income families research program, marginalized citizens, and it was based on 29 low-income mothers. So really great learnings came out of this topic. I'm not going to go into it too much more because Councillor Maxwell shared that, and I don't think I have anything else to add from that. May the 18th was Investment Advisory Committee, and that's a month later. We're north of 13 million, but still our money weighted average was negative 2.6 versus the balanced income CAD of negative 7.56. So again, still faring out quite well. May the 18th was an audit committee meeting where we had the introduction and explanation of what to expect from our upcoming audit, and further to bring forward a named council, which will be brought tonight, to replace a vacant position on the committee, and the audit commenced May the 24th. I'm just going to cover off a little bit with respect to KBC. I did cover off earlier tonight about the AT plan, and that they thought it would not negatively impact the business community. Lots of things going on with KBC, but I'll shoot right to the ED report, where 50,000 has been received from Develop Nova Scotia for placemaking activities and the comfort station. They've received 25,000 from ACOA for a light installation and mural map, and they're working with Nick Owasco on that. ACOA would also like KBC to be the conduit of 50,000 for live music in the Annapolis Valley. And so the funding is to hire artists, performers, and marketing and event delivery. So lots of really, really great things going on with KBC, and a lot of wonderful grants being secured by the executive director. April the 25th was a capital budget meeting, which I attended. And this is not in my report, but I just wanted to make note of something with respect to the Apple Blossom Festival that just transpired this past weekend. I was reading in the Saltwire Network newspaper, and I wanted to read this one little paragraph. So as most folks know around the community, we had the Black Women in Excellence represented here for the first time during the festival. And these were the words from Tia, who is the originator and owner-operator of Black Women in Excellence. She said, the municipality has been the backbone. They are definitely allies, especially Lindsay. Young, and Tracy, says Tia Upshaw. Kentville has done everything above and beyond to ensure that we're celebrated and included. We are not just tolerated anymore. So when I read that in the newspaper, it really spoke volumes to me and what some of the changes that we're seeing happening in our town. And I wanted to do a special shout out to Lindsay for bringing that to our town. She was instrumental in that. So that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Zabian, I see your light is on.
Yeah, thank you. Deputy Mayor, just a question, what's the update on the comfort station, when they're gonna start working, or are there any details, kind of when that's gonna show up?
Just looking at the minutes now, that will be done in conjunction with the town of Kentville, right? Because there's an operating component that will.
Maybe I'll ask CEO.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
okay,
think-
sorry.
No.
No, thank you. And so we have a draft lease document that there's a meeting on tomorrow. So once we've had an opportunity to review that and see all the puts and takes in it, then we'll be better able to kind of respond back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and our next report is Councillor York.
Thank you. So I have attended, as everybody else, the council and CAC meetings. Councillor Maxwell gave a wonderful update on the police commission, so I'll leave that as it is. I will update about the Valley Regional Library. Anne-Marie has officially retired. We've sent our congratulations from the town and welcome Angela Reynolds in her stead. So she has begun the role as interim CEO, so it's a very exciting time for the library. The multi-purpose facility, there will be a meeting in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so I should have hopefully an update at the June council meeting. As well for the KCA PTA, spring fling planning is underway, but also succession planning. So the PTA is saying goodbye to Don Hare and Laura Churchill-Duke as they officially graduate out of KCA. Some of them, Laura Churchill-Duke in particular, have been there since before the school was even there. So they were instrumental in the creation of the playground, and that was there before the school was even built. So they have certainly served their time, sounds like a punishment, but anyway, they have served us well in their capacities there, and we thank them for their dedication and their service. So I wanted to quickly say that. Also had the pleasure of attending the community garden meeting that was held by Lydia in the Parks and Recreation Department at Oakdean Park to discuss the future of community gardening and what citizens might want to see for the future of the gardens at that location. Was very fortunate to attend the Safegrad Pancake Breakfast with my children. The Safegrad committee with Northeast Kings was fabulous. They had a lot of activities planned, and they fed my family beautiful pancakes, better than mine apparently. I was also I got to attend the Valley Hub grand opening next door, and the Brian Gibson mural unveiling, which was absolutely spectacular. It was done with Jamie Peerless with Phantom Effects, and it is absolutely spectacular. I think everybody's probably had an opportunity to see it. If you haven't had an opportunity to see it up close, I do recommend doing that. It is absolutely stunning. Very thoughtful details put in place that commemorate both the public life of Brian, but also bits of his personal life, which is truly touching and not at all surprising that Jamie was able to incorporate those details. So hats off and kudos to all those involved in that project. I think everything else has likely been discussed at this point, so I will pass the torch.
Excellent, thank you very much. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. I attended all the same meetings as the rest of you. May 2nd was Diversity Kings, where they talked about June highlighting Pride Month, and it's Indigenous History Month as well, so they've got some events planned for that. May 18th was the Audit Committee, where we just got a kind of a discussion on the process of the audit and a new appointment to a citizen, which will come up later. Some events I attended on May 17th, along with Councilor Maxwell, we attended the opening of the Heritage Center, and again, as she commented that it was the special presentation to the VON, that they've been in Kentville since 1925, so it was quite remarkable to attend that, and I want to thank those volunteers who keep that place running. I also attended the Brian Gibson mural unveiling, and that was phenomenal. As my daughter said, that's our old bus driver, so even though he's got a lot more in his background than being a bus driver. That's how they recognize him. And I just want to mention the Apple Blossom Festival. Our staff at the town of Kentville, from the people in this building to Public Works to the town police, they amaze me every year because there's so many people in town and it's cleaned up literally within hours. You wouldn't even know there was an event here. So if they haven't been thanked, I just want to give them kudos. They amaze me every year. And I've had a lot of engagement with citizens in the last month, a lot of calls about this active transportation route, but business community primarily, but I think if they're presented, that should be fine. And quite a lot of correspondence as well on the amendments to the noise bylaw. So hoping that comes up soon. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. CAO Troke, could you take this opportunity to provide council with an update on the operational matters discussed 2 weeks ago at CAC meeting?
Absolutely, thank you so much. One of the things I just wanted to kind of in the background and echo the comments from various councilors around the table is that Apple Blossom Committee, trying to do a reboot this year was a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting. Particularly, I want to thank Kentville Police, Public Works, and Lindsay Young, who does a lot of the legwork behind the scenes. And she's kind of in a million places at one time to make it all work. So I want to make sure we give not just recognition for the fact that it goes off smoothly, but there's a lot of heavy lifting that happened to make that work. We're already starting to talk about this week now, talking about our follow-up afterward, lessons learned, so that we can make sure that gets incorporated for the next Apple Blossom. We have a large tender closing on June 2nd, so this is street work, mainly the McDonald work that's going to happen, so that'll be coming in. And the sewer operational and capital budgets are complete. In the last couple of weeks, we have our full operational HR manual has gone through for all staff review, and that work then with comments will be finalized in the next couple of weeks. The audit committee work, which a number of folks touched on, also had an opportunity to participate at the REN with their audit, which has been great. There's a lot of good work making sure that the statements not only are accurately reflected, but there's a lot of time and energy going into the notes with it to make sure that anybody picks it up can get a full flavor on what's going on. This is the time of year for us when we're going through staff appraisals and discussions are underway with regards to next year's priorities. Of course, as folks around this table know, the CAO gets his performance appraisal done, and I share that with my staff, and then we sit down and talk about how those goals and things are going to happen for the next 12 months. And then the work that's in the hopper, we had meetings this week with the folks at PACE, so there's going to be a briefing note coming to council at CAC around the kind of next decision points around PACE program. The heritage bylaw, which was discussed tonight, we've been flushing out a number of pieces there. Noise bylaw, work is continued on, but also with regards to two requests that have come forward. There's work started around the youth committee and then also the property advisory committee, as well as our G70 meeting policy. That's my quick update.
Excellent, thank you very much. Councillor Zabian, you have a question.
Thank you, CAO. Is that report in the agenda, or, because it's nice to have that written down too. I didn't see it there, but I didn't have my glasses on when I read the whole package. Is your report in there?
I just give a verbal update at this point.
Okay.
I do my update CAC.
Okay.
And then I just touch base with
You
what's
kind
going
of put them
on.
all together, okay. And the other thing too, is there any update on the legal that was hired to do the investigation on the code of conduct?
The only thing I can say there is that contact's been made, there's been discussions, so it's progressed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. CAO, I just wanted to mention, at my last Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition meeting, they were talking about presentations that the chair had done at for different councils. And so I asked when we were going to get one. And I guess it may have slipped your mind, but you haven't responded to the chair of the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition. I believe she sent you an email. And so just if you could get back to her, either a yay or a nay, one way or the other would be nice.
Okay, no, happy to do that, and because I thought it was a timing issue, just when the conversation happened around coming in, that we were packed, so
Yeah.
it may be that we need to fit in
Yeah.
a place going forward, but I'll happy to do
But
that.
just a touch base with
Can do.
her, that's all, just,
Can do.
okay, thank you.
All right, and my report. So most of the information is there, and I'd just like to tip on a few highlights. So the NSFM mayors, CAOs, and wardens had several conversations with regards to the provincial property and deed transfer tax that was put in place. And I'm going to say that on behalf of all municipalities, the NSFM was very out front with this. And one of the biggest things that we were pointing out to the province was with respect to the fact that we wanted to have that open discussion. And it just, we felt blindsided because they had just rushed something through. And, you know, at the end of the day, as Councillor Huntley mentioned, our minister was at the NSFM, and he took a lot of heat during his presentation to us. And then I'm also going to tell you that we went to lunch afterwards, and his phone was firing up, and he actually got to stand up and tell us that the province had taken away that tax. So you know, it was a really great moment, and you know. Never underestimate the power of the NSFM or the power of the municipalities when we come together for that type of stuff. So other highlights, the IMSA, so the Intermunicipal Service Agreement Hiring Committee. We were evaluating our RFP and having some discussions, and we will have some announcements on that going forward. The IMSA group met on the 13th of May, and we were reviewing the REN proposal, which got overwhelming support from the mayors, and will be going out for further review. REAP, although I told you that REAP was finished when we graduated in April, it seems that even though we've graduated, they keep sending us more homework, and so we're now doing the final homework, where we think there may be another final homework, but nonetheless, there's still things to do, and we're seeing some great results from that. The Kings Remo agreement is signed, and the nice thing is that Dan had to go around and get us to each hydraulically, or what's it called, a wet signature, I think is how they term it. On the 19th of May, Deputy Mayor gave me the great pleasure of attending the Regional Sewer Committee. She knows how much I like that poop stuff. And one of the big things, of course, 'tis the season, and the lagoons are shifting around, so there was, I guess, some odor, you know, it didn't smell good. However, the work that we did last year, desludging two of the lagoons makes a big difference, and all of our numbers were good, so they expect, or they anticipate that turn will happen, and everything will be good. We talked about operations and compliance, the operational and capital budget update, although we weren't getting them. They weren't ready for us yet. They expect that we should be seeing them soon, and. Again, anytime you need me to go to sewer, I'm there for you. NSFM Spring Conference, as Councillor Huntley said, it was actually a really great conference. There were actually 119 attendees. You know, it's the first conference, the in-person conference we've had since 2019. And our presentations were absolutely spectacular. In particular, the municipal success stories. One of them was from Cumberland County with their landfill at Little Forks. And what they have done is basically outsourced the entire process to a civilian provider. And they have a 25-year contract with fixed pricing. So they know where they're going to be for the next 25 years. And anyway, really great story. We had a briefing from the Climate Action Change person in New Glasgow, and it was unbelievable. She was just a dynamo, and what they're actually doing is figuring out how they're going to fund their climate action. So they're not looking for new money, but they're looking for ways of using money that they already have within their budget, whether it comes from their parking fees or, you know, selling off things. But it was really a great briefing, and she does plan on sending us their climate action plans. So you know, it'll be someplace to start. We don't have to start with that blank page. And I was very happy to know that our very own Jennifer West is collaborating with these folks as well. So with regards to source water protection, we did have a committee meeting on the 27th of April. In typical fashion, we had our well field reports, our water reports, our planning reports, and our review of the source water protection plan. Unfortunately, our representative from Environment was not there. And we expect him to be around next time. So we are looking at a policy change. McGee Lake was always our surface water lake, but the odds of us ever using this again for the source of our drinking water is not very great. However, from a firefighting perspective, maintaining that lake is within our best interest. But what would be good for the Kings County folks who live on that lake is access to it for non-motorized crafts and swimming. Because it was drinking water, there was no swimming or motorized or non-motorized crafts permitted. And so this would be a good thing for the folks that live on the water. The next one was the Water Commission. We actually had 2 Water Commission meetings. The first occurred, and we got operational, financial, and engineering updates. And of course, the new project is the new wells and holding tanks. And then we moved on to the actual budget, and I have a separate update for that. And then our audit committee met on the 18th of May. We had a pre-audit briefing by our auditor, Andy Force. And this is actually a new requirement that comes out of the MGA is that audit committees must have 2 meetings per year. The pre-audit meeting with the auditor and the post-audit meeting again with the auditor. So that was excellent. And committee member Peter Rainforth completed his term, and which necessitated a new member. So we did go out on the website to find applications, and we had no applicants. But as a committee, we did some brainstorming and came up with a few names, and went out, and so that comes to council tonight for your approval. Miscellaneous events. On the 29th of April, I was up at Aldershot. Whether you realize it or not, the Royal Canadian Air Force is actually doing basic training up at Aldershot, and these were all new shiny recruits who will be joining our Air Force as they come out of Aldershot. And I got to make a presentation on women in the Canadian Armed Forces. And I'm just home from Winnipeg, where I attended the Honorary Colonels Conference in Winnipeg. And of note, we attended a dinner and had an afternoon in the Museum of the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, which is the only national museum outside of Ottawa. And I just want to say that from a Kentville, Annapolis Valley perspective, is that Travis's photo is there with his pink T-shirt, and it is actually one of the displays. So needless to say, I was waving my arms madly so that my colleagues would know that Kentville had special note there. So kudos to Travis Price. The work that they did at Central Kings goes on and on. So really a wonderful thing. And that is my report. So under new business, we have Our first item is a letter to the province from the Accessibility Committee with regards to the bridge. So council has been provided with a draft letter from the Accessibility Committee for review detailing some anomalies with the bridge. Appreciation is extended to the committee for this draft, and a letter will be sent based on our discussion tonight to DTIR, so Transport Infrastructure Renewal, under the Town of Kentville letterhead and the CAO's signature block, as this is at the end of the day an operational matter. Deputy Mayor Savage, did you wish to speak to this matter from a committee perspective?
Just that it's something that we spoke about at the committee, and Councillor Maxwell can attest to that as well. It's very important to the committee and certainly to the citizens of Kentville and anybody visiting. And, you know, we realize it's an operational matter, so it obviously has to come from the CAO to the Department of Infrastructure and Renewal, and hopefully they will be receptive to our concerns and follow through with it, so.
Excellent, thank you very much. CAO, did you want to provide council with an update on this matter? I know there's some work been done on lights and.
Yes, thank you. So obviously, through Director Bell to his colleagues at Transportation Public Works, there's been a number of conversations, and of course, one of the things this year that the town is going to be doing is there's going to be lights put up on opposite ends of the bridge, because we, as a town, don't physically own the bridge's infrastructure. So as part of that capital work, that was one of the items that was approved. And then obviously, the information that when this goes through, there's going to be follow-up with regards to any other items that we can do in order to improve the accessibility by directly reaching out to some of the individuals who on the operational side at transportation would be able to help us with that as well. So we'll make sure that the work that we're doing obviously will continue on, but if there's any other pieces that we can do with the province and them assisting on us, obviously we want to take that and incorporate it into the work.
Excellent, thank you, CAO, and just to for continuity, if the accessibility committee could be CC'd on that letter so that they are aware, and if anybody, if any member of council has anything they want added or anything with regards to this letter that you've just reviewed, please send that information to the CAO. All right, our next matter is CERMGUARD. Now, how's that for an acronym? So the NSFM is serving municipalities to provide feedback into the Service Exchange Renegotiation and the MGA Municipal Government Act Review Committee, CERMGUARD. So from an Annapolis Valley perspective, I'm going to say that Mayor Don Clark is on this committee with several other mayors, wardens, and members of council and members of the province. So they are requesting a consolidated response from each municipality. So members of council are tasked to provide their responses to the 20 questions to the CAO by the close of business on June 9th. The responses will be collated and a copy circulated prior to submitting to the NSFM on June 13th. And I would request that if you have no response, that you actually put nil as your response to that question, so that we know that you had no response to the question. So one of the things I think the original service exchange occurred in 1997. Mm-hmm. So it's well overdue that we review this. So this is, again, important work that we do. All right, speaking of important work that we do have a recommendation to authorize the Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority Guarantee Resolution for Kentville in the amount of $215,352, or 10.23%, which is Kentville's share of Valley Waste. So a motion that council authorize the Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority Guarantee Resolution for Kentville in the amount of $215,352. If someone could move that, please. Councillor York, thank you. And the seconder? Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. It has been moved and seconded that council authorize the Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority guarantee resolution for Kentville in the amount of $215,352. Is there any discussion on this? Or CAO, did you want to add anything for interest? All right. If there are no questions, if there is no discussion, are you ready for the question? And the question is that council authorize the Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority guarantee resolution for Kentville in the amount of $215,352. Voting is now open. Pointed at Jennifer. Your vote? And voting is now closed? And you'll annotate that Paula did, or Councillor Huntley did vote. Thank you. All right, the motion is carried. Thank you. And in your report, or in your package, there was the report from the Water Commission. So on the Water Commission, we met on April 25th. There was a full agenda including both operational and capital budgets. The Kentville Water Commission operational budget was passed unanimously. Kentville Water Commission operating budget, a revenue of $1,953,800 with expenditures of $1,709,400, leaving us with the budgeted surplus of $5,100, a non-operating revenue of $243,800, and a surplus of $286,200. The Kentville Water Commission capital budget was passed unanimously, and the Kentville Water Commission capital budget is $837,500. And this report is submitted to council for information purposes. The next item we have is a report from the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee reviewed potential nominees and are pleased to make the following recommendation to council for approval. Citizen member Jim Noonan to sit for a 2-year period on the Audit Committee. The motion is that council approve the citizen member Jim Noonan to sit for a 2-year period on the Audit Committee.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. And a second? Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approves citizen member Jim Noonan to sit for a 2-year period on the Audit Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter? With no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is to recommend approval of citizen member Jim Noonan to sit for a 2-year period on the Audit Committee. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, next item of business is our correspondence, and CAO, if you could give us the highlights of these letters, please.
Sure. So there was 2 letters here came from Sir White. These were hand delivered, and basically Mr. White was writing with regards to concerns around the Kentville Heritage Society building, and basically wrote this as well in the second item, and also wanted to make some comments with regards to the Kentville Accessibility Plan and universal design for the downtown. Obviously, Mr. White is very passionate about making sure that the Heritage Center and its use continues on for many years, and he wanted to make sure that these would go to all of council and they were aware of his position.
Excellent. Thank you, CAO. So there's nobody here. So the council has,
Could I make a comment?
certainly.
I think we should also note under correspondence that we had 10 letters by my count concerning the heritage bylaw, in support of the heritage bylaw. And I think it's important that the public knows that that their letters came in, and we don't need to read them, but we should acknowledge that they were there. And then I'd like to also mention, just for council's knowledge, I went through and counted the Facebook responses. We had over 125 likes or loves on getting this bylaw started, which is a number, and many comments. So just to let the public know that we acknowledge their input.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Typically, when we're doing a bylaw, when the bylaw comes before council is when the correspondence package becomes part of the record, so that will occur, much as it has occurred with other items of this nature. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I'm a little disappointed because Mr. White asked to have his letters read, and we don't get a huge amount of correspondence that we see anyway as councillors. I don't know what hits the office that we don't see, but we don't get a lot that come in, and I've noticed in the last year and a half, many have, some of the ones we've gotten, some of them have said, I'd like to have this read, and I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind not reading them. I would read them now if you'd like me to. I mean, he did ask that, and I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers. I mean, they've taken the time to read, and they've asked to have them read.
Thank you, Councillor Zabian. This is our council meeting, and correspondence is put into the record, and it is available to anyone at any time. So it's best to paraphrase and keep
Why would
moving
it be
on.
best to paraphrase? There's not a lot. If there was heaps of them, I could understand the logic behind that. But when there's only a letter of 3 paragraphs, why do you have to paraphrase?
Well, I guess it's in the interest of time. We are looking at a council meeting that is already in 2 hours, and we had another meeting prior to that. So I would say that in the interest of time,
Well, that's not a very good excuse, though, Mayor Snow. I mean, the public has they've written letters, right? So
And
I don't think that's
the letters
fair.
are part of the record.
They've asked to have them read, though. I don't know where the rest of council sits with this, but when a citizen
We
who
have
pays
our-
us to sit in these chairs wants their letter read, I don't think it's hard. Look at the time you and I are wasting now that the letters would have been read and we would have moved on to the next. I just think there's a lack of transparency here, and these things are just kind of ambushed, and I don't agree with it. And as a council member here, I can't. That's not right. That's wrong.
Thank you, Councillor, and you are perfectly within your right to not agree. As you know, Council is currently looking at our G70 meeting policy, and correspondence is part of that meeting policy. And at the time when it comes before us, you can levy your feelings of how you want correspondence dealt with. But our means of dealing with it has been such that we paraphrase. Councillor Maxwell.
I ran into a problem with receiving the letter. I guess it was put into our mailbox, and I didn't know it was there. And, there was, I guess I heard via the grapevine, I guess it was the Kempful Heritage Society that told me that there was probably a letter over there. I'm just wondering if it's possible for our administrative assistant, when there are letters, and it's so rare that we actually get a written letter, just to send out a quick notice that there's letters in the mailbox for us to pick up. And if that's possible, CAO, I'm wondering if we can do that.
Can do.
All right, thank you. So the council has land and legal matters which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. We will not be returning to Facebook Live for completion of the meeting or adjournment. So the motion is to move into a closed session to discuss the agenda items. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor York for the second, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried, and the time is 7:54. And we have minutes